Hey guys, I am going to be talking to you today about how to HIPP a document. Is sourcing, as you can see here on my screen. When you take the AP U.S. History test at the end of your junior year, there is an essay called a document-based question, and they want you to source the document. Tell us what it means, but not just, hey, it means this, and just copying over what it means. It's another way to source the document. So we're going to look at that today. HIPP stands for H, historical context. It involves connecting a document to specific and historical events, to specific circumstances of time and place, or to broader regional, national, and global processes. When you hit something or you bring context to something, so your document is a little point. The historical context is the big circle around that point. So you're looking at your document and you want to know the when, where, why, how kind of stuff. Where and when was the source created? So for instance, we're looking at the Declaration of Independence, right? Well, we know it was created in 1776 where was in Philadelphia, right? But what's going on at the time? Well, the colonies are not so happy with Great Britain, right? That's why they're writing this. They've already tried several times to get the king to see their point of view. That's why they do this. It could be that the document is a specific reaction to an event. If it is, you need to point that out. And does it represent the period? So you're looking at the document as one little piece of a time period, particularly, again, the dot in the big circle. You want, for historical context, to explain the big circle of time. Okay. All right. We're going to go to the next document. All right. The next I in HIPP is intended audience. Who are they writing the document to? If it could be any kind of document, obviously when we did the Christopher Columbus one, the intended audience was the easiest, right? It was the King and Queen of Spain. And we talked about when you did your gold or glory or why thing. Maybe he mentions gold a lot because he knows it's going to get read. If I knew that somebody's going to bring me money, I'd probably read the letter. So that's what you're looking at. Who is it directed to? Does it even identify a person or group? If you are a preacher and the document we're reading is your sermon, it would be to a particular group, right? And you would have to describe who that is. And because of what the document is, we have to decide if it's reliable or accurate. So is a letter probably the feelings of that person, right? But you also have to think about who they're sending it to, how that person would feel. You might also want to think about, are they trying to sell something, right? If that would also affect the reliability or accuracy. So that's another thing there. Okay. The first P is purpose. What is the author's end game? What do they want to accomplish when they're writing this, right? Why did they write it? That's basically what you're looking at. What are we trying to accomplish in writing this? So again, back to the Declaration of Independence. Why are we writing it? Right? We're saying, okay, not only are we saying we're independent from you, but we're also saying these are the reasons we're independent from you. So our intended audience isn't just King George, but it's also other European nations to explain to them why we don't think that we've been treated well, right? Sometimes you might have a purpose that has an ulterior motive. We talked about reading between the lines. You may see that as well. Okay, P, point of view. This is always the hardest one for all of my students. This is kind of the bias, right? Where is the author coming from? These can impact the tone and message of the document. Consider things like race, class, gender, age, region, occupation, values, motives. So the time periods that we're going to be in, we will have to think about particularly region, right? Which you don't think about that as much. But all the way into the, all the way till, the Civil War, we have to think, was this person from the North or are they from the South, right? It is going to color the way that they look at things. So what is the author trying to make And you do definitely need to say, how does the author's background impact the message? So as we get towards constitutional period, there are things called the Federalist Papers, right? You might know Hamilton was a writer of a majority of the Federalist Papers. So if I was looking at one of those Federalist Papers, I would say, well, I know that Hamilton is for this Constitution, right? So from knowing that, then I know that that's going to say all the positive things that the Constitution could do, right? Which does kind of change the way that the document should be read, right? We know that he's trying to convince us of the rightness of the Constitution. All right, here is an example. This is something that we'll actually read, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, but this is just an example to give you an idea. The document says, the God that holds you over the pit of hell, much as one holds a spider or some loathsome insect over the fire, abhors you and is dreadfully provoked. His wrath towards you burns like fire. He looks upon you as a worthy of nothing else but to be cast into the fire. Okay, so we'll know more about Jonathan Edwards when the time comes, but we had to notice that the source already gave us a date, which is very helpful. And you'll see that a lot of your documents will do that. So it kind of allows me to go ahead and say what the context of the time period is. There is, when the colonies, particularly in the Massachusetts area where Jonathan Edwards is from, are first formulated, those colonies are very religious. As you read in today's, the southern colonies aren't near as religious, but the northern colonies were. And Jonathan Edwards is talking to these people who have kind of gotten out of that fervent religious attitude that they had at the beginning of the colonies. Because by 1730s, 1740s, those colonies have been there 100 years or so. So this is what they call the First Great Awakening. It's a period of time of religious revival that it can come through there. So that's the context of Jonathan Edwards' document. Who's he writing it to? And he's kind of like being a preacher, right? So he's saying, hey, church members, come on, we need to get it together. The purpose was that the sermon was created to get the church members back to that more religious or pious way of life. The point of view, right? This is always the hardest part here. Edward's point of view is that the people are lost without the grace of God, right? He is, from the point of view, as one of these great awakening pastors, right? He's moving towards this. If you don't turn to God, it's hell for you, right? Kind of these hellfire brimstone kind of ideas. And so that's kind of an example of what a HIPP will look like. So notice that these aren't like super long explanations. I would go ahead and get into the habit, though, of making them into sentences. So, for instance, on historical context, you could say, the context around this document was revival of the Great Awakening into the 1730s and 1740s. Just make it into a sentence, because that is going to allow you to go ahead and go towards that essay writing where you can get really used to that. So now it's going to be your turn, right? I've got this letter from Sebastian Brandt to Henry Hovener. You're going to read this letter. And then I want you to write. So I've got it separated, historical context. You're going to look at that and notice again, I did put a date and where. So you can kind of do the idea. This is going to make more sense as you've gone through the lesson today about what their experience was like in that time period. And then you've got this intended audience. That's kind of easy, right? It's a letter. A letter's always the easiest to do, intended audience, but try to put it in a full sentence. Why is he writing the letter? I don't know. It's never going to be because he wanted to inform him. You're going to have to really think about it. Intended audience is never history students in the future. You've got to really connect it to the content of the letter. Point of view. What is the point of view that the author is trying to do? You have to think, is he a settler? What does that say about him? We'll talk about the kind of people who settle the areas. So that would be kind of like his occupation. Like, how does that tint the time period? And so you're going to go ahead and fill this out as you go. I tried to choose a really short document for our first time, so that you can have gone through it. We are going to have a HIPP on the Chapter 2 assessment, and the document's much longer, but I will go over kind of what we're looking for there. If you have any questions, again, don't hesitate to send me a text or send me an email, rather, and I will try to get back with you. But we'll go over this tomorrow so that you have a chance to do it. But just try it, see how you get it. It's kind of hard, and you do learn it better over time.